let's go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for joining. My name is Tim McMullen, and I have my camera off today because I'm at the house, so I apologize for that. But I just don't have the bandwidth to support all this fancy stuff. So we've been talking quite a bit the last 3 years about AI. And I think you all know how Grooper has integrated with large language models to do some pretty amazing things around classification, extraction, even separation. But what we want to focus on today is something called quoting methods. So what this is it allows us to limit what actually gets handed to the AI, and that has a lot of benefits that I'm not going to steal Rihanna's thunder today. So she's going to go into that. As normal, we have everybody's microphones are muted, but you can engage with us through the Q&A. So please do so. If you have any questions, just put those in there, and we'll do our best to get those answered. Without further ado, Rihanna, take it away.
Thank you, Tim. Let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, sharing. All right, can everybody see that?
Yes, we can.
Yep.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Okay, so like Tim said, today we're going to be talking about quoting methods. So, quoting methods essentially control what text is fed to the AI whenever you're using AI in Grouper. And depending on which quoting method is selected and configured, the quote that is sent to the AI can be anything from the entire document text, a small portion of the document's text, the data that has already been extracted from the document, including layout data and other types of information, or even multiples of these. And these can be used pretty much anywhere you can use AI. So I'm going to go through here. I've got a data model set up, and in this data model, I have a few data sections, and each one I'm going to configure with the different quoting methods that we're going to be talking about today. First, we have the default quoting method. Oh, I gotta refresh my page. My apologies. All right, so the first one, let me open up and make sure we're gonna start with this Grouper Basics document. So this Grouper Basics document, this is a training document that we have created here at BIS just to use in a lot of our courses and for examples like this. So here we've got a document that has some information on different courses you can take with Grouper, and it goes over 2 pages. And at the top of the second page, we've got some information up here about a course and then some tables if we need to use tables for anything. So the first thing we're going to look at is extracting a date. Now we have multiple dates on this document, and right now in this data section, I have a fill method set, and the fill method is AI extract. We're going to be using, for this one, GPT 4.1 as the model. I've gone ahead and set it here. And then we have this property here called document quoting. Now, right now, there's nothing set on it, so it's set to its defaults. By default, if we come here and test this document, what it's doing right now is all of the text that has been extracted from the document is being sent to the AI. So the AI is getting all the text on the document, is parsing through it, and based on what data field that I have set on this, it's going to return something, or it's supposed to return something. Give me just a second. Am I on the right level here? We do have text data. That's good. And it's set on here. Just a little bit of technical difficulties. Just give me 1 second. Let me take it just a second. That's a little odd. Let me reset this fill method and just try that again right quick. I have this single instance in misdisposition, default to parent, so that we shouldn't be having any data section shenanigans. Let me try setting this up again. Generator, model. And then we will do just GPT 4.1 for this. Everything else should be good. I'll go ahead and set data element just in case. That shouldn't be a problem. This is the Grouper Basics documents, and test that out.
So
So
assign
it's
it,
possible that you're
assign it the
running
document
into.
type. Yeah.
You can try that. Try assigning the document type on document one.
Okay, that could be.
But it's also entirely possible that you're getting to the problem you're trying to illustrate. We
It might be.
purposefully made this example really ambiguous to illustrate a point, right? Our field is named date. Very, very, very generic label there. And we're probably trying to find something very specific, right? And it may just be the case that the LLM is, crapping out here because it's like, hey man, I don't really know what you're talking about. Like you gave me this big old document, like that's a lot of text. You just told me to find a date. Not going to do it.
So yeah,
And
for the default, when there's not a quoting method sent and all the text of the document is sent, a lot of times that, like Dylan said, just can really be confusing to the AI. Like you've sent me a lot of information. There's actually multiple dates on this document. Hey, I'm not sure which document or which date to send back to you. I need more information, or I'm just confused as to what you're looking for, which is actually one of the downsides of not having a quoting method, like Dylan was saying. Sorry, Dylan, I don't know, did I interrupt you there?
no, you're good. Continue.
Okay, great. So that being said, that is one of the downsides. So one of the positives, some of the benefits of just using the default quoting method where you send the whole text to the AI is it's easy to use. There's no setup needed. As you saw before, I mean, you don't have to configure anything except for the model here. And the full text provides a lot of content to the LLM. So it's not going to miss anything inside of the document. But that being said, the drawbacks, which may be, as Dylan said, maybe what we're seeing here, is that if you send a bunch of information, like too much information can be a bad thing sometimes. If you send the AI too much information, it may not know exactly what you're wanting it to extract from the document. Another drawback of doing this without a specified quoting method is, depending on the size of your document, the process of actually sending information to the LLM and then waiting for a response can take a significant time. However, if you're only sending it a part of the document, a lot of times that can cut down on the time it takes for you to get a result. And also goes without saying, if you're sending more information to the LLM, you're also using more tokens. And you may not want that depending on, how many tokens you have available. If you have a really long document, there's a possibility of hitting your token input limit, and it can just cause problems. So we may be actually seeing a problem here where the date is just not being returned because Grooper isn't sure what to do with this. So let's go down to this extracted data section that I have, and let's configure this to see if we get better results than what we're seeing before by setting a quoting method. So on the data section tab of this data section, I'm going to go into my fill methods, and we're using the 4.1 model on this one again. But this time I am going to set my document quoting to this extracted. Now, the extracted document quoting method is extremely common to use as far as quoting methods go. And what we can do is use Grooper's ability to extract information from documents. And then what Grooper has actually extracted, that is the only thing that gets sent to the LLM. So you can pick and choose what you want to send the LLM using Grooper's Grooper's ability to extract data from a document. So what does this look like? With the document quoting property set to extracted, opening up the sub properties here, we have this quote extractor property. Here I can set an extractor just like I would on a number of other objects and other places in Grooper. You can just choose whichever one you would like. For our purposes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this to a pattern match, and then using regular expression, I'm going to come in here and select and actually write a pattern to only send a portion of this document that I want sent to the LLM. So let's say the date that we want is actually not a date that's on this first page. Let's say the date that we want is actually here at the top of the second page. Let's say we want this start date here, this 11/23/2025. Well, what I can do is actually write an expression, a regex, regular expression. Yep, I gotta hit the shift first. So if I put dot star as my regular expression, it collects everything on the document. But if I precede it with a form feed prefix pattern and end of string as the suffix pattern, then it will look for a form feed, which begins on the second page, and go to the very end of the document. And since we only have 2 pages, it is only highlighting the information on the second page, and that's what's being extracted.
So you're just grabbing all the text on the last page with that pattern, right?
Yes, all
Okay.
the text. Yeah, just the text here. What you can see here, this is the information that is being extracted. Okay, and then I click OK. And when I click OK and save that out, now when I test, let's see what we get. Okay, first I want to point out, even though we didn't get a result on that last data section, notice how quickly we got a turnaround and got an extraction on this. Before it sent the text, the full text to the LLM, and then took some time to actually analyze the document and try and figure out what we want. Whereas here, since we only sent the second page, we got a really quick turnaround time in getting something back. And when we look at what was actually extracted, it extracted the date that we want. So that's one of the biggest benefits, or one of the big benefits of using quoting methods, is sending a smaller portion of the text to the LLM takes less time. You also use fewer tokens. You can actually look, I guess I didn't look at the tokens or the diagnostics for the default content type, or the default, I'm sorry, data section. But you can actually come in here to your Grooper diagnostics and look at how many tokens are being used. So prompt tokens and total tokens, we're only using about 406. I'm pretty sure if we had looked at the diagnostics previously, we would have seen a significant, like almost double that, if not more, tokens used. And difference in like completion operation, like the time it took to actually process that. Okay, so that is extracted. And again, it's very versatile. You can use any of those extractors to extract information to send to the LLM. You can be more exact about the area you want to extract from, leading to more targeted extraction, which is good. But there are a few drawbacks to using the extracted quoting method. So one of the biggest drawbacks is you have to know more about Grooper to use the extracted method. You have to understand how to extract something. Whereas without a quoting method at all, you just click a button and it does the thing. Well, here you have to know a little bit more about how to set an extractor to get at the section of data that you, or the section of text in the document that you want to send to the LLM. So with AI, we're trying to simplify how to configure Grooper to get what we want. So it's not so with the extracted method, you'll have to know a little bit more about extraction, and it takes a little extra time to configure and test. So with that in mind, let's take a look at the difference between using the extracted quoting method and the labeled region quoting method. So this one, let me go ahead and go into our fill methods. We're going to be using the same model. We use GPT 4.1 on this one. I am going to set the document quoting method to the labeled region. And similar to the extracted method, the purpose of the labeled region is to send a smaller portion of the document to the LLM. Where this differs is how we choose what to send to the LLM. So we have these two properties here, the header extractor and the footer extractor. The header extractor, again, we can set to pretty much any kind of extractor. One of the things that's really, or one of the extractors that's really common to be set on a header extractor would be a list match. So I can go into my list match and then just look at our document. Let's say this time I want to return a date, but I want to return a date on this first page rather than the second page. And let's say I don't want this first date, but rather I want this date of last course here. Say I want this one right here. So what I can do is look at the format of the document and use labels or headers or something, some kind of text segment on the document that comes before whatever value I am wanting to return, and use that as a header extractor. So I'm just going to type in this section label right here. Let's do I for one type of application in terms of agreement. And if I were to leave this just like this, what Grooper will do is it will send to the LLM all of the text in the document that comes after that header. So all of this down here, all of this onto the second page. But let's say I want to narrow that down just a little bit more. Let's say I just want to send the LLM this small portion right here. I'm going to click OK, and then I can set this footer extractor using a list match. And I will go in and I can use something else as a footer to tell Grouper where to stop looking for text to send to the LLM. So in this case, I'm going to use this label that says course start. So we'll just type in course start, colon, and then I'm going to click OK, save that out. And now let's test and see what we get. I'm going to test on this first document, click the play button. Again, we have a pretty quick turnaround. And notice that we are getting the result that we are expecting here. If I go into my diagnostics, once again, we can see how many tokens were used. In this case, we used even fewer tokens than in our last AI call that we did with extracted quoting method. And if we look at the request body JSON, we can actually see what is being sent to the LLM, and we can actually compare that to, like, if you're looking at different fill methods, or not different fill methods, I'm sorry, I saw fill methods on the document on the page. So different quoting methods. If you use different ones, you can go in here to the request body JSON in the diagnostics and actually see what was sent to the AI. So you can see here is the header that we used, and then it came down to course start, which is the footer we used. And that's all that was sent. And so only a few tokens were used. It didn't take much time, and we got an accurate result that we were looking for.
Well, that's a pretty simple way to have, kind of what we're talking about here, a really targeted section of the document. Because like, I don't know everything about regular expression. I'm sure that extracted method is great for people who do, but I could certainly find like, hey, here's a label that starts the section of information I want to send to the LLM, and here's a label that ends it. Set a header, set a footer, boom, done.
Yes. This definitely has similar benefits and drawbacks to the extracted method, but like Dylan said, this can be a little bit simpler to set up than the extracted method if you maybe don't know as much about regex or want something pretty simple finding a piece of the document. All right. Have we had any questions so far?
No, we have not. We are
Okay.
clear.
Excellent. Okay, well, don't be afraid to ask any questions. If you have any, just use that Q&A button in Zoom. With that, I am going to continue on to this layout objects data section. And this one is a little bit different. This is going to be a little different quoting method than the others we have looked at so far. So if I come in here, this time for this particular use case, I'm going to use GPT-5, and I'm going to set the document quoting to layout objects. So what layout objects is, I'm going to save that right quick. And on our documents, when we actually ran them through Recognize, we used an IP profile to detect certain layout features on this document. We detected both lines and boxes on this document. So if you look down here, we have some OMR boxes with like check marks in them that we're going to try and return information on. If you look at our layout data here, we can see that these boxes were detected. But I also want to show you something right quick. In the text, because of the way this was extracted, the OCR extraction actually found these boxes and replaced the boxes with these little symbols. So with these little symbols on here, AI, especially GPT-5, one of the things that we have found is that it has become smart enough to be able to, at times, detect the boxes without needing additional information, just using the symbols that come from the OCR. So honestly, for this one, if I were to, I don't want to do that. If I were to not use any document quoting, the AI for this particular document would be smart enough to pick out, well, I guess I don't have the right thing here. It would be smart enough to pick out the boxes, the OMR boxes that are being returned here.
Just based on the text data, right?
Yeah, just based on the text data. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to jump to another batch where we have some OMR data right here by the loan type on this closing disclosure training document. But on this particular document, right here is where the OMR boxes are, and you can see that we don't have those symbols. The OCR did not put the symbols in there. So if we were to just test this as is, go ahead and let that run through, because it doesn't have anything to tell it that there are OMR boxes for this particular data, it's not going to detect anything and instead is going to look at what data point is closest to the label that we have as our data point, or it's going to look at one of them. It's not going to be accurate. So like this one, loan type
Literally doesn't have
was
enough information to make that decision, right?
right. It doesn't have enough information to determine which is the right value to return because it doesn't have the checkboxes. So instead, what we can do is we can actually send, if I go into my document here, we can actually send the layout data that is detecting these boxes as a JSON to the LLM to give the LLM a little bit more context as to what data that we're trying to extract. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go into my data section and then under fill methods, I'll jump in and change our document quoting to, we're doing layout objects. And then I have to actually tell the document quote, tell Grooper through the document quoting method, what components we actually want to send to the LLM. So I'm going to select checks boxes for sure, because check boxes are actually what we're looking for as far as the data that we want returned. But I'm also going to check this text selection. Now, what this is, so we are already sending text to the LLM. However, the text doesn't have any kind of location data with it of where the text is located on the document whenever we just send the text as is. If we send the layout information in the JSON and we click this checked box next to text, then when we send out our document to the LLM, it's going to have better idea of where the text is on the document in relation to other things like checkboxes. So it really just provides a little bit more context to the LLM on what it's looking for. So with those fill methods set, I'm going to save and let's see if we get a better result when we send this out to the LLM. Now, while it's doing that, I'm going to point out one of the drawbacks of using layout objects. So when you send a JSON to the LLM that has layout data, that particular file, the layout JSON, has a lot of information in it. And it sends a lot of data and a lot of text and a lot of tokens. So it takes a little bit longer in order to go to the LLM and come back with your extraction. So we have an accurate extraction, but it took significantly longer, you may have noticed, than some of our other quoting methods. Let's go into our diagnostics, and we can actually see in the request body of what was sent to the LLM. I mean, look at all that. That
Yeah, and all
is,
those numbers are like the coordinates for each text segment, basically. Yeah,
and like
yeah,
we're
that's a lot.
still going. So it's a lot of information. So while it gives a lot of really good context, we're using like, look, that's a lot of tokens compared to what we had been sending before. So that's one of the drawbacks of using layout objects. But you can also, so for layout, you can send OMR boxes, the data for that to the LLM. You can send lines, like some of these lines here on the document can give context to where things add on the document to the LLM, give a little bit more context. You can do
A lot of extra
barcodes.
data, but if you don't give it to the LLM, you're not going to be able to use it in, say, your instructions or anything like that, right? It's
Right.
just, if the LLM just has the text flow of the document, that's all it's got. It's as simple as that. So by providing it additional context, you're giving it more information about how this information is laid out spatially on the page, right?
Right.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Dylan, for making sense of some of my word salad there.
No, you're good. You're
It's a
good.
it's a complex idea to really talk about, and but yeah, so it's very handy, but there are some drawbacks to that.
Yeah, and I'm actually just gonna interrupt you again real quick. We're
Okay,
running a little bit long just because this is a little bit more technical and we
it
didn't
is.
we didn't really expect it to take up the full 30 minutes. We've actually got quite a bit more to show you in terms of these different quoting methods and the different ways you can manipulate the text and other data that is sent to an LLM. But we want to be respectful of your time and not, basically eat up your whole morning. So we're actually going to split this webinar into two. We're going to go ahead and stop here. We'll break for questions in a second. and then finish up with the rest of the quoting methods in the next webinar, which Tim will get with you on the date on that. But before we do break, I'm just going to sum up what we talked about here. We introduced you to the most basic quoting methods for sure, these being methods that alter the text data that is sent to the LLM, either using an extractor with the extracted method, using a header and a footer extractor with the labeled region method, or using the layout objects method to send additional layout data to the LLM as well as just raw text. We'll talk about the semantic method and the data values method and the multi-quote method next time. But before we do break, does anybody have any questions for us?
None yet, but we're going to leave it open for a second to ask if anybody has any questions. And this is a really important one. And Dylan and I sat in the dev meetings weekly, and we see the amazing things that dev is doing, primarily because they're controlling the flow of what's being handed to an LLM. So I can't stress enough that this is, I'm pretty sure nobody on this call has played around with quoting methods. I know I spent some time this week doing it, and it's really eye-opening once you start to realize it's more like a rifle than a shotgun is what it ends up being, right? So it's
Yeah, great analogy.
and we've put, like we always do in Grooper, we've gone overboard. And we've put we've put so many different ways you can do this, and then of course you can combine them all together. So it's definitely a more complex topic, but it's something I think we do deserve to focus on for a second, follow through on this webinar. So we'll do that in just under 2 weeks. We'll try to keep this cadence. So if we don't have any questions going, then we definitely will bring down the call that y'all get this recording, and then look for emails from me as we set up the next one for 2 weeks from now. Dylan, anything else we need to quickly cover, or are we good?
I'm good. Rihanna, you good?
I am good.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody. We appreciate your time as always, and we will talk to you in a few weeks. Thanks much. Take care.